Miss, may I have this dance? You dance with her? Look at her. That is pathetic. She deserves respect.
Why would anyone let the kitchen boy touch her chair? The words cut through the ballroom before the first waltz even ended. A boy in a white tuxedo laughed behind his glass. Two others laughed with him. Madison Reed sat near the edge of the dance floor, her silver gown folded carefully over her motionless legs. Her hands locked around the arms of her wheelchair. Across the room, Ethan Carter froze with a tray of champagne in his hands. He was not supposed to look up. At Hawthorne Academy, boys like Ethan were trained by silence. Keep your eyes low. Keep the water glasses full. Keep moving before someone remembers you exist. But that night, under the gold light of the chandeliers, he looked up. 3 months earlier, Ethan had arrived at Hawthorne in the back seat of a county van, wearing a thrift store coat and carrying one duffel bag. The school sat on a hill outside Charleston, South Carolina, wrapped in ivy and old money. Its brick walls had survived wars, recessions, hurricanes, and generations of boys who were taught early that wealth was a birthright. Coach Daniel Mercer met him at the front steps. "You Ethan Carter?" "Yes, sir." The coach studied him for a moment. Tall, thin, quiet, not weak though. There was something steady in the boy's face, something that did not ask for permission to survive. "Dorms on the 4th floor," Coach Mercer said. "Kitchen entrance is around back. Staff eats after students. That's how they do things here." Ethan nodded. He had heard worse rules. At St. Mark's Home for Boys, where he had lived since he was 11, rules came with locked cabinets, cold pancakes, and caseworkers who changed every 6 months. You learned not to get attached. You learned not to ask why your birthday cake came from a discount rack, with another child's name scraped off the icing. So Hawthorne did not scare him. It only confirmed what he already knew. Some people were born into rooms. Others were allowed to clean them. His mornings began at 4:30. He set out linen napkins while the campus was still dark. He polished silverware until his fingers smelled like metal. He carried trays at breakfast, sat through calculus, literature, and anatomy with tired eyes, then returned to the dining hall before dinner. The other students walked around him like he was furniture. "Move, Carter. Kitchen's that way. Scholarship kid." Sometimes they did not even use his name. Ethan gave them what they expected. A quiet face, a lowered chin, no argument. But every night, when the building finally slept, he unlocked the small wooden case beneath his bed. Inside was not a violin. It was a folded stack of medical notes, old photographs, and a silver locket with his father's face inside. Dr. Benjamin Carter had once run a free clinic in rural Kentucky. People drove hours to see him. Farmers, factory workers, veterans, mothers who had been told by hospitals that nothing more could be done. He had hands people trusted before they trusted his words. Ethan remembered those hands. He remembered standing on a stool beside an exam table while his father said, "Never touch a body like it belongs to you, son. Ask, listen. Respect comes before healing." After his father died, Ethan's mother kept teaching him. 4 hours a night, nerves, joints, muscle memory, pain, hope. She taught until cancer made her voice thin. Even then, she would place his fingers on her wrist and whisper, "Feel first, then decide." Now in the scholarship dorm, Ethan touched the locket and whispered, "Good night, Mama." Downstairs, the academy slept on polished floors and old names. Nobody knew what he carried. Nobody knew that the boy washing their dishes could read a spine with his hands. Nobody knew that one night soon, in a room full of powerful people, every person who had ignored him would turn and watch him walk forward. And the girl no one wanted to dance with would be the first person in that room to truly see him. Madison Reed had once believed her body was a place she could trust. Before the chair, before the doctors, before every room became a test of who would look away first, she had been the girl people watched for different reasons. She rode horses before sunrise. She debated with judges twice her age. She danced in bare feet across the marble hall of her father's, while her mother laughed from the staircase and told her to slow down before she broke something. Then came the fall. It happened on a cold March afternoon at a dressage event outside Aiken. The sky had gone dark too quickly. Thunder rolled over the field. Madison was 16, sitting tall on a chestnut gelding named Carolina Gold, her white gloves steady on the reins. Her father, Harrison Reed, stood near the rail in a navy overcoat. Her mother, Evelyn, had one hand pressed to her throat, as she always did when Madison rode. The horse spooked at the crack of thunder. Once a second, Madison was upright. The next, she was airborne. People later said she fell clean. They said it as if that made it kinder. Harrison reached her before the medic did. He knelt in the wet grass, his expensive trousers sinking into mud, and took her face in both hands. "Baby, look at me." Madison blinked up at him. Rain dotted her eyelashes. "I can't feel my legs," she whispered. Those words split the Reed family in half. After that came hospitals, white rooms, cold scans, specialists with calm voices and careful eyes. Harrison sent records to every major medical center that would take them. Atlanta, Baltimore, Boston, Cleveland, Los Angeles, then London, Stockholm, Berlin. Every answer arrived wearing a different letterhead, but the meaning was the same: permanent damage. No recommended intervention. Supportive care. Adaptation. Madison learned to hate that word. Adaptation sounded gentle. It felt like a locked door. At home in Charleston, the Reed mansion changed around her. Ramps appeared by the side entrance. Rugs disappeared from hallways. Her bedroom moved downstairs. Everyone called these changes practical. Madison saw them as proof that the world had stopped expecting her to return. Her friends came at first. They brought flowers, candy, school gossip. Then visits became texts. Texts became heart emojis. Heart emojis became silence. Logan Brooks was the worst because he had once mattered. He had held her hand at football games. He had danced with her at the winter formal. He had told her she was the strongest person he knew while standing beside her hospital bed, with drugstore roses in his hand. He came twice, then never again. His father, Senator Allen Brooks, sent a fruit basket with a printed card. Logan's nothing. Madison never asked why. She knew. People loved strength when it looked beautiful. They were less sure what to do when strength needed help getting into a car. By the time she turned 18, Madison had become quiet in a way that frightened her mother. She read by the windows. She smiled when spoken to. She said she was fine with a voice so polished it broke Evelyn's heart. One evening, Evelyn found her daughter in the old music room. The piano was closed. The dance floor had been waxed but untouched for years. Madison sat beside the mirrors, staring at the reflection of her chair. Evelyn stopped in the doorway. "Sweetheart." Madison did not turn. "I used to know where I ended," she said softly. "Now I feel like everyone sees the chair first, and then they stop looking." Evelyn crossed the room slowly and knelt beside her. "Then we remind them you are still here." Madison laughed once. No joy in it. "How?" Evelyn's hand trembled as she touched her daughter's knee, though Madison could not feel it. "Your birthday. A real ball. Music, lights. Everyone who forgot how to see you." Madison's eyes sharpened with pain. "No, just one night. Mom, please. Just one night," Evelyn whispered, and now she was crying. "Not for them. For you. For the part of you they did not bury." Madison looked back at the mirror. The girl in the glass looked tired. Too young to be done living. Too proud to admit she still wanted to be asked to dance. So she said yes. And 3 miles away, in a narrow dorm room at Hawthorne Academy, Ethan Carter pressed his father's locket between his fingers, unaware that the girl in the silver chair was already moving toward him through the dark. The night of Madison Reed's birthday ball, the house looked too beautiful for what was about to happen. Reed Manor stood behind iron gates on the edge of Charleston, white columns glowing under lantern light, live oaks bending over the drive like old witnesses. Valets moved between black cars and silver SUVs. Women stepped out in silk and diamonds. Men adjusted cuffs, checked watches, and spoke in soft voices that sounded important even when they said nothing. Inside, the ballroom breathed gold. 3 chandeliers burned above the polished floor. A string orchestra tuned beneath a portrait of Harrison Reed's grandfather. White roses climbed the walls. Crystal glasses caught the light. Every detail said money. Every detail said legacy. And near the edge of the dance floor, Madison sat in her wheelchair, trying not to disappear. Her silver gown had taken 2 hours to arrange. Evelyn had pinned her hair into a soft twist fastened pearl earrings at her ears, and smoothed the skirt over her legs, with hands that shook only when Madison was not looking. "You look beautiful," Evelyn had said. Madison had looked at herself in the mirror. Beautiful. The word felt like a dress that no longer fit. Now in the ballroom, people smiled at her from a distance. That was the worst part. Not cruelty, not yet. Distance. The practiced kindness of people who wanted credit for noticing pain without having to come close to it. A woman in emerald satin leaned toward her husband and whispered, "Poor thing." Madison heard it. She pretended she did not. Harrison Reed stood near the front tables, speaking with a governor and a hospital board chairman. But his eyes kept pulling back to his daughter. He had built companies, crushed competitors, negotiated contracts worth more than small towns. Yet he could not make one decent young man cross a room and ask his daughter to dance. The orchestra began the first waltz. Couples moved onto the floor. Shoes whispered over wood, laughter rose. Madison watched bodies turn in smooth circles, hand to hand, shoulder to shoulder. She remembered that rhythm in her bones even if her legs had forgotten it. Evelyn bent close. "I see Nathan Cole by the windows. He was in your literature class." "Mom," Madison said quietly. "Just one dance, sweetheart. Please don't." But Evelyn was already moving. Nathan Cole saw her coming. His smile tightened. He looked past her at Madison, then down at his phone. "Nathan," Evelyn said, soft but hopeful. "Would you be kind enough to dance with Madison?" He swallowed. "I would, Mrs. Reed. Really. But I promised this one to Claire." There was no Claire beside him. 30 seconds later, there was. Madison lowered her eyes. The second waltz began. Evelyn tried again. This time it was Parker Ellis, captain of the tennis team. The kind of boy whose mother sent handwritten thank you notes for invitations. He touched his wrist and winced before Evelyn even finished asking. "Old injury," he said. "Coach says I should be careful." He'd since the next song with both hands on a girl in blue. By the third refusal, Madison's fingers had tightened around the armrests. By the fourth, the room knew. Whispers moved faster than music. At table 7, a girl Madison had helped pass. Chemistry covered her mouth to hide a nervous laugh. An older man looked away and studied his drink, as if shame might be floating in it. Headmaster Whitcomb stood near the doorway, stiff and silent, pretending to supervise nothing. At the service entrance, Ethan Carter stood with a silver tray in his hands. He saw everything. He saw Evelyn's smile break piece by piece. He saw Madison's shoulders fold inward. He saw the boys invent excuses with clean faces and empty eyes. He saw the adults watch it happen and call their silence manners. Coach Mercer stood beside the wall, jaw tight. "Keep serving," the head waiter muttered at Ethan. "This is not your business." Ethan did not answer. Across the room, Madison stared at the hem of her gown. One tear slipped down, caught the light, and vanished before anyone could pretend not to see it. Then the ballroom doors opened. Logan Brooks walked in late, not rushed, not embarrassed, late on purpose. He wore a black tuxedo, a senator's smile, and the confidence of a boy who had never paid for the damage he caused. His friends gathered around him before he reached the first table. He saw Madison. He saw Evelyn behind her. He saw the empty space around the wheelchair, and something cruel lifted in his face. The orchestra kept playing. The room kept breathing, but Ethan Carter set his tray down, slowly, carefully, because some moments ask a man who he is, and this one had just arrived. Logan Brooks raised his glass before he said a word, and that made it worse. It made it feel prepared. He stood near the center aisle with his tuxedo jacket open, his blonde hair brushed back, his smile sharp enough to cut skin. The boys around him leaned in because they knew that look. Logan was about to perform. He always performed when he had an audience. He looked across the ballroom at Madison Reed. Then he laughed. "Somebody tell me something," he said, loud enough for the orchestra to miss a note. "Why would any man waste a dance on a girl who can't even stand up for it?" The words struck the room and stayed there. No one breathed. Then one of his friends laughed. A short, ugly sound. Another joined him. Then another, weaker this time, because even cruelty knows when it has crossed into something darker. Madison did not move. Her face stayed lowered, but her hand tightened so hard on the wheelchair arm that her knuckles turned white. Evelyn Reed made a sound behind her, small and broken, like glass pressed under a heel. Logan, someone whispered from the tables, but no one stood, not the governor, not the school headmaster, not the men who had built out hospitals and sat on charity boards and wrote checks for public kindness. Harrison Reed rose halfway from his chair. His face had gone pale. Evelyn saw him move and shook her head once. Not because Logan deserved mercy. Because Madison had already been humiliated enough, and a fight between powerful men would turn her pain into another spectacle. So Harrison sat back down, slowly, and hated himself for it. Logan saw that too. Power had protected him all his life. His father's name opened doors, closed complaints, softened consequences. He had learned early that people might dislike him, but they would rarely risk saying so. He lifted his glass higher. "Look at her," he said, all dressed up like the chair is part of the outfit. A girl at the nearest table looked down at her lap. An old surgeon closed his eyes. Coach Mercer stepped away from the wall, but the head waiter caught his sleeve. "Coach," the man hissed. "Don't make a scene." Coach Mercer looked at the hand on his sleeve until the man let go. Across the room, Ethan Carter took off his white serving gloves. He did it slowly. First the right, then the left. He folded them once and laid them beside the tray. The silver tray still held 4 untouched glasses of champagne. Tiny bubbles climbed through the gold liquid as if nothing in the world had changed. But everything had. Ethan began to walk. At first, no one understood what they were seeing. A server crossing the ballroom without a tray looked wrong in that room. It broke the rules quietly. Then completely. Heads turned. A woman lowered her glass. One of Logan's friends muttered, "Where's he going?" Ethan kept walking. Logan turned when the movement reached him. His smile twitched. "Well, look at that," he said. Kitchen boy got lost. Ethan did not stop. Logan stepped into his path. "I'm talking to you." Still nothing. Ethan moved around him. That was when Logan grabbed his arm. The grip was fast. Entitled, familiar. The way a boy grabs what he thinks cannot strike back. Ethan looked down at Logan's hand. Then he looked up. For the first time all night, Logan's face changed. It was small, almost nothing. But Coach Mercer saw it. Harrison Reed saw it. Even Evelyn, through tears, saw it. Logan had expected fear. He found stillness. Not arrogance, not anger. Something steadier. Something older than the room. Ethan spoke softly. "Take your hand off me." The ballroom heard him because the music had died. Logan's fingers loosened. He did not know why he obeyed. He only knew that, for one cold second, the boy in front of him did not feel like a servant. He felt like a door Logan had been foolish enough to push. Ethan walked past him. He reached Madison's chair and knelt. Not low like a servant, level like a man. Evelyn stepped back, both hands pressed to her mouth. Madison did not lift her head. Her tears had fallen onto the silver silk in dark round spots. "My name is Ethan Carter," he said. "I work in the kitchen at Hawthorne. I am sorry for what they said." Madison's lips trembled. Ethan waited. He did not touch her chair. He did not touch her hand. He gave her the one thing the whole room had taken from her, permission to decide. Then he said, "Miss Reed, may I have this dance?" Madison lifted her head as if the question had reached some buried part of her before it reached her ears. For a moment, she only stared at him. The kitchen boy. The scholarship student. The one every rich boy in the room had walked past 100 times without seeing. Ethan Carter knelt before her with his hands still at his sides, waiting. Not reaching, not rescuing, waiting. That was what broke her. Not pity, not a speech. Respect. Behind her, Evelyn Reed shook so hard, her pearl bracelet clicked against the back of the wheelchair. Harrison stood frozen between 2 tables, one hand gripping the chair in front of him, his eyes fixed on Ethan like he was trying to understand how a stranger had done in 1 sentence what money had failed to do in 2 years. Logan gave a thin laugh. "This is pathetic," he said. "What's he going to do, drag her around the floor?" No one laughed. That silence landed harder than any insult. Ethan did not look at Logan. He looked only at Madison. "You do not have to say yes," he said. "And you do not have to prove anything to anyone in this room." Madison swallowed. Her voice came out rough. "Then why ask?" Ethan's face softened. "Because they made you feel like a diagnosis. You are not one." Her lips parted. Something moved behind her eyes. Not hope yet. Hope was too dangerous. But recognition. A small light under a closed door. Ethan lowered his voice. And because I need to tell you something. I do not believe your spinal cord is permanently damaged. The room shifted. A glass clicked against a plate. Evelyn whispered, "Oh God." Harrison stepped forward. "What did you say?" Now Ethan turned, but only halfway. He still kept himself at Madison's level. "Sir, I have no right to make promises, but I have studied spinal injuries since I was a child. My father was a physician. My mother was an emergency nurse. I know what I am saying sounds impossible. It is not." Headmaster Whitcomb rushed in from the side, red-faced and stiff. "This is completely inappropriate. Ethan, stand up at once." Coach Mercer moved before anyone else did. He placed one hand on the headmaster's arm. "Let him finish." "Daniel, he is a student, a kitchen worker." Coach Mercer's eyes did not move. He is also the only person in this room treating that young woman like she has a voice. That stopped him. It stopped several people. Ethan turned back to Madison. "May I ask you one question?" Madison nodded, barely. "When you fell, did the numbness come all at once? Or did it spread?" Her breathing changed. At first it was my left side, then both legs. A murmur passed through the nearest tables. Ethan's jaw tightened. "And sometimes you feel burning near your lower back, even though they told you that you could not feel anything there." Madison's eyes widened. Evelyn clutched the chair. "How do you know that?" Ethan did not answer right away. His father's voice moved through him, calm and old. "Feel first, then decide. Because true complete paralysis usually does not behave like that," Ethan said. "Not with that pattern, not with intermittent burning, not with the way your right hand trembles when your lower back spasms." Madison looked down at her hand. It was trembling. She had hidden that tremor for months. Logan's voice cracked from behind them. "This is insane. He is guessing." A white-haired woman near the front table leaned forward. Her name was Dr. Helen Markham, retired neurologist, sharp eyes behind thin glasses. "No," she said quietly, "he is not." The room heard her. Harrison turned toward her. "Helen?" Dr. Markham stood slowly, one hand on the table for balance. "I am not saying he is right, but those are not guesses a waiter makes." Ethan breathed once. Then he looked back at Madison. "I can examine the area through the gown, only with your permission. I will not move you. I will not touch your skin. If anything feels wrong, I stop immediately." Madison's eyes filled again. All her life, people had made decisions around her. Doctors spoke to her father. Nurses spoke to her mother. Friends spoke over her chair. Ethan asked her. Only her. The ballroom waited. Madison looked at Logan, then at the boys who had refused her, then at her mother crying without sound. Finally, she looked at Ethan. "Yes," she whispered. "I give you permission." Ethan stood, but he did not rush. That mattered. In a room full of people waiting for spectacle, he moved like a person entering a place where pain had lived too long. He asked Evelyn for a clean linen napkin from the table. He placed it gently over the back of Madison's gown, not because he needed it, but because dignity needed witnesses, too. "Miss Reed," he said, "I am going to place my fingers along the outside of your lower spine, over the fabric. If you want me to stop, say stop. That is all you have to say." Madison nodded. Her throat was too tight for words. Ethan stepped behind her chair. The ballroom leaned with him. 400 people, suddenly silent enough to hear the violinist breathe. Even Logan had stopped smiling. Ethan placed 2 fingers near the middle of Madison's back, lightly, not pressing, listening. His mother had taught him that the human body tells the truth in small ways. A guarded breath, a tightened shoulder, a pulse that jumps before pain speaks. He had spent years learning those things in kitchens, clinics, shelters, and church basements, beside people who could not afford second opinions. His fingertips moved 1 inch lower, then stopped. Madison inhaled sharply. Evelyn grabbed Harrison's arm. "What did you feel?" Ethan asked. "Pressure. Where?" "Lower back, left side." Dr. Helen Markham took 1 slow step closer. Her face had changed now. The detached expression of a retired physician was gone. Something urgent had replaced it. Ethan moved again. Madison's right hand twitched. Ethan saw it. So did Dr. Markham. "Again," she said under her breath. Ethan touched a point just above Madison's hip. This time Madison gasped, not from pain, from shock. "I felt that." The words were quiet, but they went through the ballroom like a match through dry grass. Harrison's face broke open. "You felt it?" Madison looked terrified of her own answer. "I think so." Logan stepped forward, panic, sharpening his voice. "Come on. She's emotional. This is suggestion. He's putting ideas in her head." Dr. Markham turned on him. "Young man, be quiet." The command cracked like a whip. Logan froze. For the first time that night, an adult had drawn a line and held it. Ethan kept his eyes on Madison. "I need to explain something. Your records may say complete paralysis, but your responses do not match that. They suggest nerve compression, maybe severe, maybe long-term. I cannot diagnose you in a ballroom. No honest person would. But I can tell you this. You need a new evaluation. Tonight. Not next month. Not when someone's schedule opens." Tonight, Harrison reached for his phone with shaking hands. "I'll call my neurosurgeon." "No," Dr. Markham said. Everyone looked at her. She walked closer, slow but firm, one hand on her cane. "Call an ambulance. Have her transported to Charleston General. Ask for an emergency neurological workup and fresh imaging. I will call Dr. Reyes myself. He owes me a favor, and he listens when evidence changes." Evelyn covered her mouth. Tears slipped between her fingers. Madison stared at Ethan. "You're saying I might not be finished." Ethan lowered himself again until he was in front of her. "I am saying nobody should have made you feel finished without listening to your whole body." That sentence did something the doctors had not done. It gave her back a piece of herself. Not a cure, not a miracle, a door. Behind them, Harrison spoke into the phone, his voice hard and breaking at once. "This is Harrison Reed. I need medical transport at Reed Manor immediately. My daughter may have been misdiagnosed." The word misdiagnosed changed the air. Guests glanced at one another. Some with shame, some with fear. A hospital board chairman slowly sat down, as if his legs had forgotten their purpose. Logan backed toward his friends. But his friends did not move with him. Ethan noticed none of it. He held Madison's gaze while sirens began to rise faintly beyond the gates. Madison reached out her hand. This time she did not ask with words. Ethan took it carefully. Her fingers were cold. His were steady. And as red lights flashed across the tall windows of the ballroom, every powerful person in that room understood the same terrible truth. The boy they had mistaken for help had seen what all of them had missed. The ambulance doors opened beneath the portico, and the spell of the ballroom broke into motion. Paramedics moved in with practiced speed. Black boots on marble, radio static, a folded stretcher rattling over the threshold. The guests parted too late, ashamed of how slowly they had learned to make room for Madison Reed. Evelyn walked beside her daughter's chair, one hand on Madison's shoulder, as if touch alone could keep her from being taken away by another false hope. Harrison strode ahead, phone still pressed to his ear, voice low and controlled. No delays, no private suite first. Emergency imaging, full neurological team. I do not care what it costs. I care who is competent. Madison heard him and almost smiled. For 2 years, her father had tried to buy certainty. Tonight, he was asking for truth. Ethan followed a few steps behind until the head waiter caught his arm. "Where do you think you're going?" Ethan stopped. The man's face was pale with panic. He saw lawsuits, donors, headlines, perhaps his own job disappearing before midnight. "You are staff," he snapped. "You do not leave with guests." Before Ethan could answer, Madison turned her chair around. "He comes with me." The words were weak, but they cut clean. The head waiter blinked. "Miss Reed, that is not really." "He comes with me," she said again. This time Harrison heard it. He turned, and the look in his eyes made the man drop Ethan's sleeve as if it burned. "Get his coat," Harrison said. No one moved. Coach Mercer did. He took Ethan's old thrift store coat from the service room himself and placed it over the boy's shoulders at the door. For one brief second, his hand rested there. "You did right," he said quietly. Ethan looked at him. "I do not know yet. That is why you did right." Outside, Charleston air wrapped cold around them. Camera phones glowed behind windows. Someone had already recorded too much and understood too little. Ethan climbed into the ambulance only after Madison nodded. Inside, everything narrowed. The light was white. The air smelled of antiseptic and rubber. Madison lay strapped gently to the stretcher while one paramedic checked her vitals, and another asked questions. Pain level? I do not know, Madison whispered. I am still learning what counts. The paramedic paused. His name tag read Alvarez. His expression softened, but he did not pity her. That is fair, he said. We will go slow. Ethan sat on the bench across from her, hands folded between his knees. He watched the small tremor in her fingers, the way her breath changed when the vehicle turned, the way fear and hope kept fighting behind her eyes. Madison looked at him. What if they say no again? Ethan answered honestly. Then we ask better questions. That steadied her more than comfort would have. At Charleston General, the private entrance was already waiting, but Dr. Helen Markham had made sure the emergency department was ready too. Dr. Isabel Reyes, chief of neurology, met them in scrubs, hair pulled back, eyes sharp from years of being tired and useful. She listened, really listened. That alone made Madison cry. Not loudly, just one tear sliding into her hairline as Dr. Reyes asked about burning, pressure, timing, spasms, left side first, then right. No one interrupted. No one spoke over her. For the first time in 2 years, Madison was not a file. Fresh imaging took nearly an hour. Ethan waited in the hall with Coach Mercer, who had driven behind the ambulance. Harrison paced in one direction. Evelyn sat with both hands clasped under her chin. Logan was not there, but his words were. They clung to the night like smoke. Finally, Reyes stepped out holding a tablet. Dr. Markham stood beside her, face grim and bright all at once. Harrison stopped walking. Evelyn rose. Madison was wheeled back into the room, pale but awake. Dr. Reyes turned the screen toward them. There is no complete transection of the spinal cord. No one spoke. The sentence was too large. Dr. Reyes continued, careful now. There is significant compression and scar tissue around the upper lumbar nerve roots. It was subtle on older scans, but it is clearer here with contrast and positioning. I cannot promise outcome, but I can say this. She looked at Madison. You were never a hopeless case. Evelyn broke first, a hand over her mouth, a sob she had buried for 2 years. Harrison reached for the wall and missed. Madison stared at the scan as if it were a map out of a country she thought she would die in. Ethan lowered his head, not in victory, in gratitude, because being right mattered far less than the door now opening in front of her. Madison did not sleep that night. Neither did her parents. By dawn, the hospital room had become a small country of machines, whispers, and waiting. A blood pressure cuff sighed every few minutes. The monitor blinked green beside her bed. Outside the glass door, nurses moved like shadows through blue morning light. Ethan sat in a chair near the wall, still wearing his borrowed tuxedo pants and thrift store coat. Someone had offered him coffee. He had not touched it. His eyes were fixed on the floor, but his mind was not there. He was back in Kentucky, back beside his father in a clinic that smelled of rubbing alcohol, raincoats, and old wood. Back watching Dr. Benjamin Carter kneel beside a coal miner who had driven 3 counties with pain shooting down his leg. His father had never promised miracles. He had asked questions. He had listened. He had told people the truth even when the truth was slow. That was what Ethan feared now. Not being wrong, being right too soon for anyone to handle. Dr. Reyes entered just after sunrise with a surgical fellow and a physical therapist named Karen Fields. Karen was in her 50s, with gray hair tucked behind one ear and the calm face of a woman who had seen bodies fail, fight, and surprise everyone. She smiled at Madison. Good morning, honey. I hear you had a long night. Madison gave a weak laugh. That is one way to say it. Dr. Reyes stood at the foot of the bed. We have reviewed the imaging again. The compression is real. The scar tissue is real. But there are signs of preserved nerve response. That matters. Harrison leaned forward. What does that mean in plain English? It means we proceed carefully. No ballroom heroics. No dramatic promises. We start with controlled testing, medication for inflammation, and a surgical consult. If the team agrees, decompression may be possible. Evelyn closed her eyes. Possible, she whispered. After 2 years, possible sounded like a hymn. Karen moved to Madison's bedside. I need to check a few things. You tell me what you feel. No guessing to please anybody. No performing. Your body is not on trial here. Madison looked at Ethan when she said that. He lowered his eyes. Karen pulled back the blanket and touched a cool instrument near Madison's ankle. Anything? Madison waited. The room held its breath. No, Karen moved higher. Here? Silence. No, higher again. Madison's fingers tightened in the sheet. There. Evelyn stood up so fast she scraped the floor. Karen lifted one hand gently. Easy. Let her answer. Madison's voice shook. Cold. I felt cold. Harrison turned away, both hands over his mouth. He was a man used to hiding emotion behind authority, but there was nowhere for it to hide now. Karen continued. Slow, methodical, professional. Touch, pause, answer, touch, pause, answer. Then she asked Madison to try moving her toes. Madison stared at the blanket. Nothing happened. Her face collapsed. I can't. Karen nodded. That is not failure. It feels like failure. It is information. Ethan looked up then. His voice was quiet. Your muscles have not had a clear signal in a long time. Sometimes the road opens before the traffic moves. Karen turned toward him, surprised. Then she nodded. That is actually a good way to put it. Madison breathed in once, twice. Can I try again? No, Karen said softly. Not yet. We stop before frustration teaches your body fear. That sentence landed deep. Evelyn began to cry again, but differently this time. Not from shock. From being cared for by people who were not treating hope like a weakness. At the door, Dr. Markham arrived, leaning on her cane. Her eyes went straight to Ethan. Young man, she said, I made some calls. Ethan stood, his face went guarded. Dr. Markham studied him for a long moment. Benjamin Carter was your father. The room changed. Harrison turned. Evelyn looked up. Madison stared at Ethan as if another door had opened. Ethan's hand moved to the locket beneath his shirt. Yes, Mom. Dr. Markham's voice softened. I attended one of his lectures in Louisville. He was the finest clinical observer I ever met. Ethan swallowed. For the first time since the ballroom, his steadiness cracked. Madison saw it. The boy everyone had called kitchen help was not guessing. He was carrying a legacy. And suddenly, the quiet young man in the corner seemed larger than every powerful name that had filled the ballroom the night before. Ethan wanted to leave the room after Dr. Markham said his father's name. He did not move, but every part of him pulled backward, toward the hallway, toward the elevator, toward any place where people would stop looking at him like he had become a story instead of a person. Madison saw it first. His shoulders changed. Just a little. The way a boy braces when life is about to take something private and make it public. Dr. Markham stepped closer. I wondered where Benjamin's son had gone, she said. After the accident, people tried to find your family. Ethan's eyes dropped. There was no family left to find. The room went still. Harrison's voice softened. Your father died in an accident? A clinic fire, Ethan said. Gas leak. My mother survived barely. We moved after that. She did not want reporters, donations, speeches. She wanted quiet. Evelyn wiped her eyes. And she kept teaching you? Ethan nodded. She said my father's work was not a brand. It was a responsibility. Dr. Markham looked toward Harrison. Benjamin Carter treated patients no one else had time for. Rural workers, veterans, people without insurance. He was not famous because he chased cameras. He was respected because he kept showing up. Harrison absorbed that like a blow. He had spent years believing influence meant access. Best doctors, fastest appointments, private rooms. But this boy's father had carried a different kind of power. The kind that did not sit on boards or wear cuff links. The kind that knelt beside the forgotten and listened until the truth surfaced. Madison reached for the rail of her bed. Ethan, he looked at her. Thank you for not letting them decide I was finished. His jaw tightened. I did not give you anything. I only asked someone to look again. That is not small. No one spoke after that. Because everyone in that room knew she was right. Later that afternoon, Dr. Reyes returned with the surgical team's recommendation. They would begin with medication and nerve response testing. If Madison's body showed enough signal, they would schedule decompression surgery within days. There were risks, infection, pain, no guarantee of walking, no guarantee of anything. Dr. Reyes explained every word directly to Madison. Not to Harrison, not to Evelyn, to Madison. Ethan noticed that. So did Madison when Dr. Reyes finished. Madison asked the question no one else wanted to ask. If it works, how much comes back? Dr. Reyes sat beside her bed instead of standing over it. I do not know. Maybe sensation. Maybe some movement. Maybe more with time. Recovery is not a door that swings open. It is a road. And it can be long. Madison stared at the blanket. I used to dance. I know, Dr. Reyes said. Your mother told me. Madison's mouth trembled. I do not need to dance. I just want to feel like my body belongs to me again. Karen Fields, the physical therapist, had been standing near the window. She folded her arms, not coldly, but to hold in her own feeling. That is a good goal, she said. A real one. Harrison turned away. His eyes were wet again, and this time he did not care who saw. By evening, the story had already escaped the hospital. A blurry clip from the ballroom was online. Ethan kneeling, Logan laughing, Madison crying. The caption said, "Kitchen boy challenges doctors at billionaire's ball." It was ugly. It was incomplete. It was everywhere. Coach Mercer showed Ethan the phone in the hallway. "You need to know." Ethan watched 10 seconds, then looked away. They made her pain entertainment. Yes, the coach said. But they also showed the room. What room? The one where nobody stood up. Ethan said nothing. Down the hall, Harrison was watching the same clip on his own phone. He paused on Logan's face, then on Ethan kneeling, then on his daughter's hand reaching out. Something hardened in him, not rage, purpose. He looked at Evelyn. "I cannot undo last night." "No," she whispered, "but I can decide what happens after it." Inside Madison's room, Ethan stood by the door, ready to leave quietly. Madison caught him. "Do not disappear," she said. He turned back. For the first time all day, she smiled. A small smile. Tired, real. "You are the only person who entered the room without trying to own my story." Ethan held the doorframe. Then he nodded and stayed. 3 months after the ball, Madison Reed walked back into Hawthorne Academy with a cane in her right hand, and Ethan Carter beside her. The chapel auditorium was packed. Students filled every row. Parents stood along the walls. Teachers watched from the aisles with the stiff faces of people who knew this was not a celebration. It was an accounting. On the stage, Headmaster Whitcomb sat behind a long table with the Board of Trustees. Logan Brooks sat in the front row beside his father, Senator Alan Brooks. Logan wore a navy suit and a face drained of its old confidence. He had not laughed in public since the video went national. The video had shown everything. His words, the silence, Ethan kneeling, Madison being seen. It had been watched by millions. But the part people kept replaying was not the cruelty. It was the moment Ethan asked permission. One quiet question had exposed an entire room. Madison's surgery had not been simple. Nothing about healing was. Dr. Reyes had removed scar tissue around the compressed nerve roots, and the first week afterward was pain, fever, fear, and tiny victories no camera could understand. A toe twitch, a spark of cold, a knee that held for half a second. Then therapy began step by step, bar by bar, breath by breath. Karen Fields never let Madison call herself broken. Ethan never let anyone call her miracle. He hated that word. It made hard work sound like magic. Now Madison stood at the podium while the auditorium held its breath. She looked at Logan first. "I spent 2 years thinking my life was over," she said. "But what nearly finished me was not the chair. It was the way people treated me once I was in it. No one moved. The night of my birthday, many people saw me humiliated. Most stayed quiet. I understand fear. I understand shock. But silence has consequences. Sometimes silence becomes permission." Logan lowered his eyes. Madison turned toward the student section. "And Ethan Carter, the boy many of you ignored, did not save me because he was powerful in the way this school understands power. He had no family name to protect him, no money behind him, no seat at the table. But he had training, he had discipline, he had character, and character is power when everyone else is afraid to use theirs." Ethan stood near the wall, uncomfortable under every eye. Then Harrison Reed rose from the first row. He walked to the stage with a folder in his hand. The room shifted. People knew that walk. Businessmen feared it. Lawyers prepared for it. Hawthorne Academy has accepted the Reed Foundation's withdrawal from all future donor events, Harrison said. That money will now fund scholarships for students from foster care, rural clinics, and working families. The first scholarship will be named for Dr. Benjamin Carter. Ethan's face changed. Harrison looked at him. It will cover college, medical school, housing, and clinical training for Ethan Carter, if he chooses to accept it. Not as charity. As repayment long overdue to the kind of people this country keeps overlooking. A sound moved through the room. Not applause yet. Something deeper. Recognition. Senator Brooks stood abruptly. This is turning into a public punishment of my son. Madison looked at him. No, Senator. Your son punished himself when he thought no one beneath him could matter. That landed clean. The board announced Logan's expulsion before noon. His college admission was placed under review. Senator Brooks did not lose everything that day, but he lost the thing men like him fear losing most. The assumption that his name could end every conversation. Ethan accepted the scholarship 1 week later. He did it at Charleston General, not at a press conference. Dr. Reyes shook his hand. Dr. Markham cried openly. Coach Mercer stood in the hallway, pretending not to. The Benjamin Carter Free Spine Clinic opened the following spring in eastern Kentucky, in a renovated brick building that once sat empty beside a closed pharmacy. It served veterans, miners, warehouse workers, and mothers who drove through the night because someone had finally listened. On opening day, Madison walked through the front doors without her cane. Not perfectly, not quickly, but on her own feet. Ethan watched from the reception desk, his father's locket warm beneath his shirt. Madison smiled at him. Still not a miracle? He shook his head. No, better than that. What work? She laughed then, soft, free, alive. Years later, people still talked about the ballroom. But the people who understood the story best knew it was never really about a dance. It was about the person no one saw, standing up for the person everyone had stopped seeing. So if this story stays with you, share it with someone who has been counted out. And the next time a room goes quiet while someone is being diminished, remember Ethan Carter. Dignity does not need permission. It only needs one person brave enough to stand.